rundown of what to expect as Guyana moves closer to celebrating our 50th independence anniversary on May the 26th, 2016. Of course, you know, it's by now you would understand that it's not only about May the 26th, but there are a lot of activities leading up to that day because the Jubilee for Guyana is very, very big and very huge. So today, the first guest on the program is the Director of Sport, Mr. Christopher Jones. He will be telling you about, giving you the Jubilee update actually, and I think he's coming up with, the ministry came up with something else called Jubilee Stage. If I'm incorrect, he will correct me when we do talk to him. Apart from the Jubilee update on today's program too, I'll also be speaking to two more APNU AFC candidates. As you know, local government elections is fastly approaching. Actually, it's next Friday on the 18th of March. So I have two candidates, one from Georgetown and the other one from the East Coast, but we'll talk to them in detail later on in the program. But for now, let's go to Mr. Christopher Anderson Jones. Welcome back to Facing the Nation.
Thank you very much, Malika.
And we're welcoming him back with a horse. He's slightly hoarse. I guess it's all of the preparation and the work that he's been doing regarding Jubilee 2016 for Guyana. Let's talk about how plans are coming on stream. I mean, let me jump right into it. There are some complaints that people, whether in Guyana or out of Guyana, still are not clear on what's happening. What are some of these specific activities? People are even complaining that, you know, the website is not giving enough information. Let's talk about what your department is going to do to help us to push and to get a little more excited about Jubilee.
All right. Well, firstly, the Guyana50.com is the official website for all of the information as it relates to the observances, the activities throughout the length and breadth of the country as it relates to Guyana's 50th anniversary. We know that a lot of persons are saying that they are unaware of some of the activities, and I rather suspect this may be a category of people who may not frequent websites or social media. A step that we have since taken, Mr. Stephen Inval, who has the responsibility for PR, is that an upcoming event, whether it be a week from a specific date, he will start to publicize those information via the local media, via the local media, both print and electronic. In addition to that, the Department of Public Information have been invited to disseminate information. Again, well, this will be via the social media, but for those persons who are on Facebook, for example. But we recognize that in addition to programs like these, I have been on 100.1 Fresh FM. In addition, my colleagues would have been on the National Communications Network, of which we start to share upcoming events of as 2 weeks from the date that we are on those programs to get the information out there, so to speak.
All right. Let's talk about that information that is currently being shared. Persons who are getting all excited about something you talked about recently. I think it's games, and it's a sense taking some of us back. Let's talk specifically about those games and what really is the concept.
All right. This was specifically will speak to the 50 shades of games. As I told some of my colleagues at the National Sports Commission, the commissioners and so forth, is that the 50 Shades of Games is actually provocative. The 50 Shades, because persons coined it to the movie 50 Shades of Grey. But essentially is getting the people moving. 50 Shades of Games essentially is all of the activities, sporting activities and events throughout the length and breadth of the country that the National Sports Commission is lending support, whether it be financial or otherwise to. All of those activities and events are titled 50 Shades of Games. In addition to that, in the month of July and August, the National Sports Commission will undertake to have novelty games being played in various spaces across the country. For example, the National Park is one such venue that will be used, and we would want to invite families over to the National Park to play these novelty games such as Saw Out, Hopscotch, Chinese, and so forth, in a day to essentially bring community, family, and friends together and just enjoy a day of frolic and play. And again, this will be replicated in the various regions. For example, the Anna Regina Community Center ground will be one, the Bartica Community Center ground will be one, New Amsterdam, Roseoak, Riverton, Linden, and so forth across the country.
One of the things, even talking about some of those things, and you mentioned the fact that these activities will be replicated in other parts of the country, far-reaching parts of the country, one of the problems we clearly see is that some of these events, again, it comes back to, for example, those people who live overseas. Sometimes they may want to plan in order to come back so that they can get in touch, catch some of these activities.
Yes.
We seem to be having a problem with publicizing the times for some of these activities. Is that a work in progress? Is there a reason?
Well, it's, in fact, the website should feature a lot of those information. The venue, the time, a brief synopsis of the event, who is the coordinating body of that. That should be had, because as commissioner with responsibility for entertainment and sports, my committee, when we made our submission to the commemorative committee, is we had to insert all of that information. So, for example, if we're having a cricket tournament coming up in let's say, SC Cribble, our information that we submitted would say cricket tournament 10:10, Anna Regina Community Center ground, 10 a.m. sharp. Admission is free, being coordinated by the NSC. All of those information.
Okay.
But I rather suspect the website of itself doesn't necessarily allow those features to be included. Because I think for myself, when I went onto the website, you see the information in terms of the activity,
but
not specific information.
All right, let's talk about. I always remind people that, yes, I'm pro-APNU, pro-AFC, and of course, by extension, I'm pro-government, but I'm also pro-youth. One of the things that we see is that there is a major youth activity, but it doesn't come until almost the end of the celebrations. Can we talk more? Is there more that can be fitted in place for young people to be a part of, and in a sense, to manage and control themselves?
Yeah. Well, essentially, persons should not, and like we have not, place emphasis only on the month of May, noting that that is the independent month, but the activities are being had throughout the entire year 2016, and that is why you would see some events, for example, like the youth one that you mentioned, is not in the month of May, but it's further up. I'm not certain if it's in the July-August period, but if it is, that is strategic, because that is the July-August vacation period where lots of the young people would be at home and be able to participate in those activities as well.
Any specific, because again, you're saying that this is what's available, the calendar is out, there's the website and so on, and people can tune into local media, whether it be newspaper, television, or even social media. Are there any specific moves to take certain activities directly into schools? Because here I'm talking about, for example, the national songs. I remember as a child going to school, there were times when you had to know a certain national song. If you didn't, at the end of the school day, you would have to stay and follow an exercise book with the words of those songs or that particular song that you didn't know. Are there measures to bring these things directly into the schools? I mean, yes, I know the education ministry may be working toward that of itself, but is there anything specifically that, as a young director of sport, that you could do to somewhat push that?
Yeah. Well, outside of sports of itself, I can speak specifically as it relates to the academia. That is another committee that has responsibility for coordinating events, and that is headed by the Director of Culture, Mr. James Rose. And his committee would have submitted, for example, throughout the school system, there will be essay competitions, there will be spelling bee competitions and so forth, and that is one aspect of it. As relates to sports, for example, again, my department, my coaches and so forth, they're going out to various parts of the country and coordinating sporting events within a particular school district. So that as well is being had. In fact, earlier in the month of January, February, some of the training program as it relates to sports have already been undertaken by the National Sports Commission.
All right. What is because before I eventually come off of Jubilee and sport and so on, and on this update, because of course I can't have Chris Jones here and not talk about some aspects of local government elections or not talk politics with Chris Jones. Of course, as you know, he's known for that. But before I get to that, what can you say at this point? What is the next big event that Georgetown especially would want to know about and take part in? Not Georgetown, Guyana in general.
All right. Just this morning, Cine Guyana, which is the local film production team here in Guyana, have launched their event, their calendar of events, which will be had throughout the year, and of course it speaks to all parts of the country. For example, for those persons who reside in Region 2, SC Cribble, Guyana Regina Community, Guyana Regina School tomorrow will be the very first Seen Guyana airing of 8 short films that were produced by Guyanese, that featured Guyanese local artists and so forth. We've had some sneak preview this morning at the launch, and I would want to implore upon persons out there in SC Cribble, in Region 2, to ensure that you go out to this film festival, because no one knew that this level of production is being had here in Guyana and is being done by local Guyanese. And in order to support their initiative, we want to encourage persons to go out. So Seen Guyana has launched their calendar of activities as it relates to Film Festival for the 50th anniversary. And tomorrow, the first one is going to be had in Guyana Regina in Region 2. And of course, they're slated as well to be in New Amsterdam, in Linden, and of course, parts of Region 4. Just last Sunday, well, this would have been part of sport. As you know, the 6th of March marked the death anniversary of former President Chedi Jagan. And of course, the National Sports Commission played a role with the People's Progressive Party Civic, in which the 3-state cycle race kicked off in New Amsterdam, and of course we participated in that. Just the weekend before that, the Guyana Shooting Federation hosted their first 50 Shades of Game shooting tournament, and of course this was had at the Guyana Defence Force shooting range. Currently, as we speak, in Region 3, Westdem Football Association, they are hosting a football tournament. Again, that too is titled 50 Shades of Game, and we should see the culmination of that tournament being had this weekend.
Okay, all right, great. And yeah, that is interesting. And I'm happy you mentioned that. That would be something good for the West Side Story program team to take up tomorrow when we go out to record this weekend's edition of West Side Story. Finally, before we come off of the Jubilee update, because of course this program is also on YouTube and Facebook eventually before the end of the day, what would you say to persons in the diaspora? Because of course they keep looking for these various Jubilee updates. What would you say to persons in the diaspora who are waiting to be excited and to come back and to be encouraged to come back and join us to be a part of these celebrations?
All right, well, it's noteworthy, as you mentioned, and rightfully so. The website, at some stage, all of the information cannot be had there. I would want to publicly now commend you, Malika, because I note on your Facebook page you have taken the task. It's a huge task of that.
Very huge.
To publicize upcoming events and provide information and so forth. I too have taken that initiative, and very soon I will be starting that too. And of course, this would be shared on some of the key pages. For example, as I mentioned, the Department of Public Information, those information will be disseminated to them, so at least those persons in the diaspora will have an opportunity to somewhat plan their events. I note it is a difficult task. I mean, I would have really appreciated if all of that information could have been there, because I know once you live abroad and you're planning to travel, you would want to set your agenda. So on behalf, I apologize that all of that information is not currently there, but we're making move. We're working assiduously to ensure that we provide as much information as it relates to the activities and events.
All right, good. Thanks for that. Of course, viewers, if you're now joining us, this is Facing the Nation. Today I'm chatting with Christopher Jones. He is the Director of Sport, and he was giving the Jubilee update that I promised you as we go closer to the actual day when we will celebrate. Oh, and everyone is talking about this, so I think I should get this from Chris too. The route for the big parade, we are accustomed to having it at MASH. I can't believe that I was going to move on to something else without this. Let's talk about that, even though we've been hearing about it. Talk about the route for the parade.
All right. As you know, the route for the Independence Parade has well, I can't say shifted, because it was never somewhere other, right? But the route for the float parade is going to be had on the East Coast Highway, essentially heading east. So all of the floats essentially are going to use the railway embankment and the University of Guyana Road to sort of line themselves up. Persons will be invited out to be on the East Coast Highway to view those floats. Now, several things. One, it is the wisest move 2, it provides for more space, more viewing space. 3, it provides more space for persons to sit and gather with their family, because you note over time, our route for Mashramani has been overcrowded.
Yes,
You can't
homes
view the
and
floats.
businesses.
Exactly. You can't view the floats, and plus there always be complaints about person can't, even the judges. You can't even get to judge the floats properly. Even the floats cannot be able to display properly because of the crowd and so forth. So the float parade will be had on the Eastern Highway, starting from the University of Guyana Road, and of course it'll head west along the Eastern Highway, passing the Russian Embassy. It will then take a turn onto Visinjan Road, make its way to the Guyana Defense Force, and of course down that main thoroughfare into the national park to be judged. And all along the route, persons are invited to view from those routes. And as I mentioned before, it provides more space, so you will be more accommodated.
And I'm assuming a smoother flow.
Very smooth flow.
All
Very
right,
smooth
great.
flow.
Of course, viewers, again, this has been this part of our conversation has been with Chris Jones, Director of Sport, on the activity, the Jubilee, the regular Jubilee update that I did promise you. Now, Chris and I are going to talk a bit about politics. We can't have that. I know many of you see both of us as young politicians, and that we are indeed, but we always remember the importance of serving the general population, not only the people who support or vote for us. Chris, let's talk about local government elections. We're 1 week away from it. At this point in time, what would you like to probably say to Guyanese? And I know there's been this big uproar about, which I don't necessarily agree with the uproar, this big uproar about why hasn't government made Friday the 18th a national holiday, and people are worried about what's going to happen and if they're going to get time. I know several persons out there don't necessarily agree with me either, but I don't think it's an issue. Chris, let's hear you.
Well, as it relates to Friday the 18th not being a national holiday, I think in this at this time, I lend support to the public opinion that it should be a holiday for several reasons. I mean, leading up to the general and regional elections of 2015, we have been and still are, including His Excellency President David Grange, advocating that local government elections are about the most important. Even at one time, we rate it as being more important than general and regional elections, because essentially it empowers the community and it empowers the villages to take control and the responsibility for the communities. And as such, and the fact that these elections are now being had after 19 years. Lots of persons, including yourself and I, have never participated in a local government elections, and still, fortunately or unfortunately, the public, the masses, have not gotten all of the information in terms of guiding them as to what exactly is local government election, what you need to do on local government election, who the people you're voting for, how you vote for them, what is a constituency, and all of that. So, noting all of this, that the public information, the public education is not of its best, leading into Friday, coupled with the fact that the average man, woman have to still go to work, and still they are in their own mind confused in terms of the process, I believe that a lot of people may not take the opportunity and go out there and exercise the franchise of voting. That's why I'm of the opinion that it should be a national holiday to afford them the opportunity, even if it's on the day itself, that some representative from one of the groups perhaps go knocking at your house on election day and you say, "Mommy voted because of X, Y," because not being au fait with the process. And that person may enlighten them at that time and probably take them to the polls and they'll be able to cast their ballots and vote. So I'm very supportive of the idea of it being a holiday. Okay. Outside of that, in my department, for example, I have 3 staff that actually resides over in Region 3. And they've always indicated to me that unless they are in a minibus as of 6:15 a.m., they will not reach to work by 8 o'clock. If now I say, person say, well, look, if they can't go in the morning, you can send them during the day or in the afternoon. If, for example, I tell them, okay, you come to work in the morning, they're at work, and I have to send them off perhaps in the afternoon to go and vote. you know the traffic congestion, again, to get out of the city and particularly to get over the harbor bridge. Persons complain of being in line in traffic for about 2 or 3 hours. If they leave their place of work at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and make their way down to the park and then head up in a bus during the 2-hour traffic congestion, they reach home after 6 o'clock. So some persons just going to view, look, it's not bottom of time for me to go out and do that. I'm just going to go home.
I understand where you're coming from in the sense of persons not wanting to leave the job for a certain amount of time. But this is me. Elections, whether general or local government elections, it's supposed to be everybody's business. And I'm thinking if you're a lenient person, a lenient manager, somebody in charge of an establishment, a ministry, a department, or what, I am thinking that you should be at least try to be lenient with your staff. The thing is, I always believe that in life we have to try to play the hand that we're dealt. If you're not going to, if it's not going to be a national holiday, you work around it. I said this yesterday. Life is not always a bunch of roses. It's not perfect. You have to work with the challenges that you're faced with every day as you try to accomplish certain things. That said, now let's talk about the elections of itself. I know you have also been doing some campaigning and some supporting and so on. Let's talk about how you're feeling now. How are the young people responding? The ones who we have thus far been able to meet, to reach, how have they responded so far?
They are responding very well, very enthused, very excited about the process as well too. Notwithstanding that, I hope that they don't run into the whole confusion, as I mentioned before, about time to go and actually exercise their vote. But specifically in terms of the politics of itself, I note and we welcome small groups, individuals who are contesting these local government elections as well. The problem in which I recognize, and this is of course following some of these groups, whether they post on Facebook and so forth, is some of their utterance as it relates to why the populace should vote for them as opposed a major political party. I mean, you had some argument that I felt so uncomfortable. It's not becoming, because essentially, as a person campaigning, you campaign on the specifics. What exactly you're going to do for my village, my constituency, because that is essentially what the man in the street wants to know. When you're going to get my drains dug, when you're going to put up street lights, can you fix my road? But instead of that, I recognize that a lot of the independents and the young groups that are now coming out for these posts are campaigning on the fact that, look, they didn't put young people in the vote. I mean, all of that is behind them. It is not a campaign tool that ought to be used and should not be used at all. Outside of that, I recognize and acknowledge, and again, I would want to do it here, all of those candidates that have been nominated by the AP and UAFC, not because of my own biases, because of being a part and parcel, but essentially these are individuals who have been in the forefront since 2010, agitating and calling for local government elections. And in fact, many of the candidates that are there for the AP and UAFC throughout the length and breadth of the country are people who would have been part and parcel of picketing exercise that were had by the then opposition leader David Granger outside the office of the president. I mean, we were there up and down in the hot sun. And I recall some of these very new groups or people who were passing you on the road and telling you why you don't go home, you're wasting time and all of that. You know, and now suddenly that these people, these candidates of the AP and UAFC have achieved the objective of having local government elections being held, are now being told that, look, you should take a back seat. You should, you should not participate in the process. It is utter nonsense. It's unbecoming. Moreover, too, it's like the song I have, when I speak at these public meetings, a song I relate to is Anthony B. Anthony B said in his lyrics, nobody wants to plant the corn. But everybody wants to raid the barn. You know, who you gonna blame it upon when it's the next man you were dependent upon? And this is the same thing that is happening now with these new groups that have emerged for local government election. Is essentially that they were not there in the struggle. You know, as I spoke to the people in Sophia and the people in constituency 14 South Georgetown, is that when you were struggling with the floods, when you were struggling with bad roads, it was always an AP and UAFC candidate that was there with you agitating for betterment. You didn't didn't have these new groups. Now suddenly they've merged. It's like, okay, it's feeding time and everybody's come
Yeah,
with a tray and bowl.
yeah.
Cannot be a lot. Cannot be hard.
They're plate and everything.
That's right.
Chris, unfortunately, I have to bring our conversation to close. I mean, well said. He said yep quickly, but I know, I know he's enjoying this. And I mean, from listening to him, viewers, you were always reminded as to why he's one of our best youth leaders. So the support is always there. Final word on local government elections, Chris, before you go. Just, I mean, again, like I said, we have to play the hand we're dealt. Just
right.
find a way to encourage people to go out on March 18th, which is next Friday, to vote for local government elections.
All right. That being said, notwithstanding that we don't know if anything will change as it relates to the day being a national holiday or not, this is a unique opportunity that has been presented to us after 19 years of not having local government elections. And of course, His Excellency the President was in the forefront since 2010, agitating and calling for local government elections. Now we have the opportunity to ensure that we empower our community to bring about betterment in our community. And you should take every and any other opportunity to ensure that on Friday, March 18, that you get out there and cast your vote for the respective candidates in your constituency. Being biased here, no holds bar, I would want to encourage you to ensure that you cast your vote and support an APNU AFC candidate in your respective community, because these are the person who essentially knows the plan and the ultimate objective of bringing about that good life that we've spoken about since 2010 in your community. Take that opportunity and don't waste your vote.
Well said. Thank you very much, Chris Jones, Director of Sport. Of course, I've been chatting with Chris Jones, the Director of Sport. We were talking about the Jubilee update and his thoughts and sentiments, and of course, his participation in local government elections. It's time to take a quick break. On the other side of that break, I'll be talking with two APNU AFC candidates. Of course, Rodwell Lewis, he is the representative of the list, that's the Pleasance industry list, and also be talking with Amjad Rahman. He is the APNU AFC candidate for constituency 7. Stay with Facing the Nation.